What's up, you guys? It's Connor, and today I'm going to be doing my December wrap-up, and I read 14 things, I think, this month, so let's just get on to it. It took me a week to finish my first book in December for some reason. My reading slowed down from November, which I think I read like 25 books, so definitely okay that my reading slowed down a little bit. And the first book that I ended up finishing was An Ember in the Ashes by Saba Tahir. I did a book review for this book, so if you'd like to know more of my thoughts on it, I will leave that in the card symbol up above, and you can click on that and learn a little bit more about it. But I did end up really enjoying this book, and I think I gave it 4 stars. I'm not going to go into too much detail for books that I've done reviews for, because you can just watch my reviews. The next book that I read was Amazonia by James Rollins. I also did a book review for that, so that will be left in the card symbol above as well. But this is a science fiction adult thriller, and I really enjoyed it. I think I gave this one a 4 stars out of 5 stars. The next book that I read was Fairy Tail Volume 5. Fairy Tail is about a wizarding guild, and it is one of the most powerful wizarding guilds around, but they also have a really hard time following the rules, and so they get into a lot of trouble a lot of the time, and it's super entertaining. The characters are super weird and just quirky and amazing, and I highly recommend it. And no matter what anyone says, I'm gonna love Fairy Tail. So you can hate it, that's fine, but I still love it. It's my first manga that I've ever read, and I just am totally in love with it. I just love it so much. This book is kind of a continuation of book 5, but it kind of gets a little bit emotional. Got me a little bit emotional. I think it's because I've watched the anime, so I kind of knew what was happening already, but it was just so fantastic. I ended up giving this one a 4.5 stars out of 5 stars because it doesn't wrap up what is happening in this story arc, but I still really enjoyed it a lot. The next book that I picked up was The Winter Nights, which is the 8th book published in the Edge Chronicles by Paul Stewart and Chris Riddell, but it is the 2nd book in the Quent trilogy, which is chronologically the first trilogy in the series. It's a little bit complicated, but if you look it up on Goodreads, it shows you chronologically which order it can be in, and then it also shows you publication order. So you can pick which way that you want to read the series. I recommend reading it in chronological order because there's a big gap between the book that comes immediately before this one and then this one. So I just recommend reading it chronologically because it also just makes sense with the way the story goes. I'm not sure why they were published out of order. I just don't know why. I give this book a 4 stars out of 5 stars. This is one of my favorite middle grade series. I just really think that it's very unique, and I love the illustrations that are in it. Like that. So cool. But there's one thing about the series that I find that I don't appreciate too much, and the Twig trilogy is an exception to this, but the Quent trilogy and the Rook trilogy both have this same thing in common, and that is that the main character, although he's supposed to be a hero of the story, is actually absent from a lot of the important things that actually end up happening, and they don't actually contribute to the success of the good characters. So I don't know, I just don't really like the fact that they're missing the most important things that happen. I mean, they are doing important things, but it's just, I feel like they're wimpy. Like, I just feel like they're wimpy, and it's kind of annoying. But other than that, I really do love this series. I love the writing. I just like the series overall, and so I really need to get book 9 and finish up the Quent trilogy and then have all 3 of those trilogies done, and then I can move on and read more books in the series because the series is very long. The next book that I read was Prince of Fools by Mark Lawrence. This is the first book in the Red Queen War. This book is about a prince who is a brat. He's a really big brat, and then he gets sucked into this plot, and he has to go on this journey to save his kingdom and protect it from this evil magic person. So I don't really know how the story is going to end up because that storyline wasn't wrapped up in the first book, obviously, but I'm definitely excited to see where the story is going to go. And I buddy read this with Shay from Shay Adventures. Adventures? I'm not sure. Caitlin from Kitty G, and Michael from Bitten by a Radioactive Book, and all 3 of them did not like this book nearly as much as I did. I ended up giving it a 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I thought the main character, Jolin, was really funny. I really liked his sense of humor, the way that he thought about the world around him, and I just really appreciated that kind of humor. I also really liked his sidekick character, or maybe he was the sidekick to his sidekick character, but I really just liked them together, and I just like the world. I thought it was really interesting. I am definitely going to be reading Prince of Thorns so I can see what the comparison was, because I feel like they didn't like this book as much because they were comparing it to the original trilogy that he wrote in this world. So I'm definitely going to be picking up that book because I got it for Christmas from Lainey, so thank you, Lainey. Then I picked up volume 6 of Fairy Tale, and I ended up giving this one a 5 out of 5 stars. I love it so much. And if you're wondering what some of the, that's not a good page to flip to, what some of the artwork looks like, it looks like that. Great. So the next book that I ended up reading was The Awakened Mage by Karen Miller. I think I started this book in November, like the very last day of November, but it took me quite a while to finish it because Sam lost her copy of it. She was listening to an audiobook, and then I was going to wait for her, but then I started getting stressed not having finished the book yet, so I ended up finishing it, and I really just didn't like it that much. I ended up giving this book a 2 stars out of 5 stars. I don't recommend this series. It is one of the slowest series I've ever read in my entire life. I thought the characterization was inconsistent. I just didn't really like the characters that much. I don't think that you should read this book. Personal opinion. It's about a boy named Asher, and he is just a regular fisherman, and then he travels to the capital where he befriends the prince, but there's a prophecy about Asher that he is supposed to fulfill, and there's these other people that are trying to make him fulfill the prophecy without telling Asher anything at all, and that is pretty much kind of what is going on. There is an elite group in the society, which is what the prince is a part of, and they're allowed to do magic, and then there's the lower group, which is what Asher's a part of, and they are not allowed to do magic. They don't even think that they have magic, but they do have magic because there is the circle, and those are the people that are trying to get Asher to do this prophecy. Whatever, I didn't like this book, so don't read it. I then read the 7th book in the Ranger's Apprentice series, which is Eric's Ransom by John Flanagan. This is the 7th book that is published in the series, but I actually recommend reading this book before reading the 5th book in the series, because that is what it is chronologically, and it just makes way more sense to be read in between books 4 and 5, because if you read it afterwards, like I did, you lose all urgency with the series because you know which characters end up where after this book, so it didn't have that sense of danger. You didn't feel like any of the characters were in a lot of danger, or you knew that the character was going to end up in this one certain place. So I would definitely recommend reading this book chronologically where it belongs, and I rated it if I had read it in the right spot. So I rated it 5 out of 5 stars because I really, really did enjoy it. You end up going to this desert environment, and so it was really interesting to learn about the culture that was there and how they lived and their different customs and the different groups living within this desert. I thought it was really interesting. I really liked how Will has grown throughout this series, and so I think that if I rated this book on where it was published in that order, like as a 7th book in the series, I think I would rate it a 4-star book, but if you read it in between books 4 and 5, it would be a 5-star book, if that makes sense. The next book that I ended up finishing was The Rose and the Thorn by Michael J. Sullivan. This is the 2nd book in the Rhyuria Chronicles series, which is a prequel series to the Rhyuria Revelations. This series, we don't know how many books are going to be in it because he said that he would write as many books as the readers wanted. So basically he writes a book, and if enough people really love that book and really want some more information and have more questions, then he'll write another book. And so there was a 3rd book published, but if there's a 4th book, it all depends on the reaction to the 3rd book and how much people love it and how many people want more books in this series. But I read this book, and what I heard about this book before reading it was that there's this character named Gwen who's a part of the Rhyuria Revelations, and she is one of the main characters of the Rhyuria Chronicles. She's kind of a background character in the original series, but she's one of the main focuses in this series. She's really, really cool in the 1st book. I really liked her character a lot, and I heard that she gets even better in this book. But I don't agree with that at all. I don't think that she was really present in this book a lot. She was one of the main characters. She was one of the main storylines in the 1st book, and she is definitely not one of the main characters of this book. It follows Royce and Hadrian, who are a mercenary and an assassin. Switched. Royce is an assassin and Hadrian is a mercenary. And then it also follows a character who is from the Rhyuria Revelations, and that is Reuben Hilfred. He is one of the minor characters again, but it kind of tells his story in this book. So it was different. I thought going in that Gwen was going to be a huge part of this book and she was going to become even cooler in my mind, but she really didn't. She kind of just stayed the same. So I really liked this book. I gave it a 5 stars out of 5 stars, but don't think that you're going to be getting more Gwen if you read the first book in the Chronicles. You're going to get some Gwen, but you're going to get a lot more Reuben. The next book that I read was the third book in the Jeremiah Hunt trilogy by Joseph Nassis, and that is Watcher of the Dark. This follows a main character, Jeremiah Hunt. In the first book, he is looking for his missing daughter. His daughter went missing 5 years ago. He's trying to find out where she is, what has happened to her, all of that kind of stuff. And the second book deals with a different problem, and then this book deals with a third new problem. This book kind of got those feelings back for me for the first book that I really enjoyed, and so these continued those. I really liked this series. I don't recommend it for people that read a lot of urban fantasy because I don't know how it compares to a lot of the best urban fantasy. I haven't read a lot, so maybe if you are wanting to check out some urban fantasy, I feel like those series are really long, and this one's just a trilogy, so you might like that. Also, the way that the series ends, I kind of want to know some more information, and so I'm definitely happy that he wrote some other books that kind of follow some other groups within the same world, but I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to figure out what happens with Jeremiah after this book series, but we shall see. I ended up giving this book a 4 stars out of 5 stars. The next book that I finished was Neverwhere by Neil Gaiman. This is a standalone urban fantasy book. I guess I read 2 urban fantasy books in a row. It's about this guy, and he is just a regular Joe Schmo, living his life. He's engaged, and then he falls through the cracks, sort of, into London below, and so everyone forgets about him from London above, and so he has to figure out how to get his life back, and then he just has to go on a bunch of adventures from that, and he meets up with a bunch of other people that he has to help as he's going along on his adventure. So I did like it, but it's not my favorite Gaiman that I have read. I ended up giving it a 4 stars out of 5 stars because although the plot was very interesting and I really liked the world that he set up and the rules for the world, I didn't really like the characters all that much. I mean, they were fine, but I didn't feel connected to them, and so I didn't care if something bad would have happened to them. So I just really wanted to feel a big connection to those characters, and I feel like with urban fantasy it's kind of necessary because you're kind of focused in on 1 or 2 characters in this urban fantasy world. This book was kind of short though for that, so I don't know. The next book that I read was volume 4 of Y the Last Man, which is called Safe Word. It's about this man named York and his monkey named Ampersand, and they're the last 2 male creatures on Earth, and so that obviously gets them in so much trouble because all of the female humans are trying to figure out why he has survived and how they're going to be able to keep the population going. This was given to me by What's Cappenin', Kristen from What's Cappenin', and I really did enjoy this graphic novel. I thought there was like this one part that I was like, really, is that really necessary? I don't know. It wasn't really my favorite, so I ended up giving this book a 4 stars out of 5 stars. I just think that the storyline is so cool, and I think it's really funny as well, so I'll definitely be continuing along with the series. I want to get volume 5, but they don't have it on Amazon, so I'm going to have to go into a store and find it that way, but I'll definitely be continuing. 4 out of 5 stars. Really like this series. And the last book that I read in 2015 was the first book in the Dark Elf trilogy by R.A. Salvatore, which is called Homeland, and I read it in this bind-up of all 3 books in the trilogy. I had no idea what to expect going into this book. I knew it was some really tropey fantasy with some dark elves that live underground, and that was all I knew about it, and I ended up really enjoying this book. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars because it wasn't my favorite fantasy novel, and I think that some of the things kind of pushed me out of the story a little bit. But I think some of those writing issues that I had with the story are going to be improved as the books go on and as I read more books in the series, because I think it was mainly just getting used to his writing style. But I really did like Drizzt, the main character of the story. He was very moral, he was very interesting to read about, and I really liked the culture that these dark elves had and how violent and brutal it was, and it was so very interesting to me. I just really liked it, and so I'll definitely be continuing along with the series, but I'm just not sure when because I have so many books to read. But if you're looking to get into some tropey fantasy, I think that Homeland was actually a really good book, so I definitely recommend that one. This book really only deals with elves though, so if you're looking for like dwarves and dragons and stuff like that, I don't know if this series has it yet, but in this first book that I've read, it's just elves. So those are all the books that I read in December. Let me know down in the comments what you read, or if you've read these books as well, let me know what your thoughts were on those. If you've read fairy tale, let me know that. I love fairy tale, so I'd love to talk to people about it. If you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye!